back a cart. I was putting a cart away. It was empty and I was supposed to walk it over to the lot, but I just wasn't paying attention. I was like staring off into space to something. And I'm just pushing the cart and I just walk right into a wall with the cart. And then all these people were laughing at me.
Oh, like me. Coach Lee, how are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing so well. Thanks for having me, Lionel. I'm so glad to be here to have this conversation.
Oh, I am super excited. I have been looking forward to this experience since the first time we connected. As I shared with you, I had a lot of questions, and I want you to help us understand, help the listening audience to understand who you are, how you get to where you are today. What's your story? And then maybe what tips you can give to all of us and help us as we go through our own spiritual journey, a physical, personal journey, and so forth and so on. So first of all, man, I got it. Okay, so here's the way I started out.
Okay.
Okay. So one, you can't be uptight here. Okay. That's the first thing.
All right.
Number
I'm working
two.
hard at that.
I can tell. I can tell. Okay, so I had to take a drink there. So anyway, and for those of you who are listening, I'm drinking tea, which is really, really good.
Tea.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a few interesting questions. You ready?
Yes, let's
Okay,
do it.
Coach. Number one, what's your favorite movie?
Oh wow. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Wow.
Movie just came out in March of this year, or April this year. I went to see it. It was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. I loved it.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Okay.
Wait, that's a lie. Wait, green. It just put on my background is blue. It sounded like the first thing that came to my mind is blue. You told me not to be uptight, but I'm like,
Don't worry.
breathe.
We got
It's
it.
green. It really is green.
Okay. All right. All right. And what's your favorite city?
Chicago, no doubt. I'm not
Down.
not born and raised here, but living here has been like the best experience. There's so much to do, so much to see, so easy to get around. I love it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. What's the most embarrassing experience you've ever had?
You said these were gonna be easy questions.
Okay. Yeah. Just
Like,
what's the most, okay. You got to give though. You got to tell me. You got to tell us.
most embarrassing experience. I think one of the most embarrassing experiences that I had was I was young, so I'm like 17, 18, and I worked in a grocery store, and I was putting a cart away. It was empty, and I was supposed to walk it over to the lot, but I just wasn't paying attention. I was like staring off into space to something, and I'm just pushing the cart, and I just walk right into a wall with the cart. And then all these people were laughing at me.
Oh, like me?
And I'm just like,
Oops.
oh, oops. And I just went on
Oh,
about my
man.
day. But that's the thing that came up to my mind. Like, sometimes we're absently aloof.
Yeah.
Me,
Yeah, for
I guess
sure.
me, I was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure all the listening audience knows, right? Everybody's had okay. Would it help you if I tell you what my most embarrassing experience was?
Sure.
No, should I tell you that? No, I'm not going to tell you that one because that
Well,
one's
I
too
just have to
bad.
listen to other episodes. Is that what
Yeah, you got
the thing is? Is like everybody else knows. So you must have
right,
said it on your
right,
podcast sometime.
absolutely. So no, I see one of the. Oh man, they're inappropriate. That's the problem, right? But
Yeah.
I would say probably okay. This is in the 5th grade. And there was this girl that I liked, and I could never get her attention. And so, we were playing baseball, doing physical fitness time, PT class, they call it back in my day. And and I went and I took her hat and I put it on my head. And then I went over to the other girls who were sitting on the, bench watching everybody play. And I went over there to try to make fun of her, and they all made fun of me. And it was probably one of the worst experiences. And then she called me an absolute idiot. And so, but anyway, wasn't traumatic at all. It was just very embarrassing. So my joke turned back on me. There you go. So now we're even, right?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Everybody gets laughed at. Everybody has that experience at some point in time.
For sure. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your story. So for those listening, I'll preface it this way. How about that? And then
Sure.
you can lead into it. So Coach is Coach Lee is a personal coach, as I shared before, but Coach Lee is also a trans man. Did I say that right, Coach Lee?
Absolutely.
Trans man. And so I wanted Coach Lee to come on, not only to talk about his very really cool business. You guys should check out his TikToks. It's pretty cool. I think I scrolled through it for like probably 30 minutes. Looking at all the videos, I was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna take that idea right there. I like that because I don't know TikTok." But anyway, Coach the trans man, and so Coach and I talked, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm absolutely open to having that conversation with you whenever you're ready to, because as I am sure, Coach has probably had many questions over his years of experience and things that he's done and gone through. And so, for my listeners, all of you know that I am a reverend, as Coach does as well. And so sometimes what people have a tendency to do is believe that, just because I'm a reverend, I am of the Christian faith. But, just because you're a reverend means that you kind of like, you can't talk to people who may have lifestyles or perspectives that's different from yours. I'm quite the opposite of that. I like to know who people are, why they are, what they do, why they do what they do, because I believe that there's commonalities that we can all find in each other's life and stories that connect us more than divide us. And so I'll let Coach talk about that story on his own. So, Coach, I'll turn it over to you, and please begin about telling us your story and maybe what led you to that experience of that change in your life. And then we can wrap up by talking about how you can help all of us. How's that?
All right, sure. So I again want to thank you for having me on your podcast. I've had my own experiences with Christianity that when I see those letters RVE in front of your name or something, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what this is gonna be. Is it okay? Is it safe to talk? But it's really a beautiful space to be in, to create. So I'm grateful to be here. And about me and my experience, for those of us who may not know about transitioning and trans and cis and that all the words that are flying around in the LGBTQ space right now, trans means that essentially, however you were born, whatever gender you were born, it is not what you identify as. So the change can be physical, or it just may not be physical. It may be just how the person presents themselves, how they wear their clothing, or how they speak, whatever makes sense and it feels good to them. But it's how they identify. So the biggest thing to recognize is that how you identify, how you were pronounced at birth, is not how you identify currently. So for me, I was born as female and I transitioned to male. And I've spent about 30 something years as a female, a cis female. And cis female or cis means that you were born as the gender and you identify as that same gender. So cis female, trans female, too many terms.
Right.
But those are just the basic ones. Cis
Now, is that a
stay
term
with
that's
that.
come out recently? Because I think I heard it for the first time maybe a week ago, and I didn't know what it meant. Yeah.
What, cis?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's been out for a while. It's been out for a while, just to make that determination or difference.
Yeah.
So if you were born that way and you continue to identify that way, that's basically cis. It's really easy to point out.
Oh, I see. Okay, so how was that experience for you in your family? Were your parents kind of like, oh yeah, that's great, no worries, we accept you, they didn't go the opposite direction where the stories that we hear that when some kids come out or identify the opposite sex, then they were born, some parents kind of go left with that, you know what I mean?
Because it's just such a whirlwind for the parents to go through that kind of thing. I understand that, and that's how the parents react. But as for me, in my experience, well, I've never really had a great relationship with them in the first place. That's why I actually got into coaching, and my whole process and going through this is that I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and I was just always looking for connection. And I'm presenting as a cis female in this case. I grew up in a small religious town where everybody's like religious here, church is there, and everybody's this way. And I was just looking for connection. I was looking for community. I was looking to be friends with people, and I just didn't seem to understand how to make that friendship last, or make a friendship, really a close friendship. I didn't know how to do that. And so I was always told that I need to go find my tribe. So when I had the opportunity to go to college, I thought, well, it's going to be a different experience. There are not so many religious people. I thought religion was the thing that was keeping me from creating the friendships, because I couldn't understand or identify with a lot of the things I was taught in church.
So
I couldn't identify with those things.
Yeah, so I want to really, really hang right there for a minute, because a lot of our listeners consider themselves Christians. Not all, but for
Hmm.
sure not all. But a lot of our listeners do. And some of them may loosely identify with that. Some of them don't. They're not comfortable with that label at all because of all the history and baggage that goes along with that. So, did was your household a Christian household? Were your parents, meaning like, were they like really involved in church, or, like how did the religious thing influence this decision you made?
Well,
Well, I shouldn't say decision you made, but
yeah,
lack of a better understanding of way of
that's.
putting it. Yeah. How did
I think
religion
that's
play in?
the.
Yeah.
I think that's the right way to put it. That's a
Okay.
perfect way to put it, because all of our experiences culminate into something that influence us to do something.
Right.
So my experience with the church and being at home was that I saw people around me say praise the Lord and thank you Jesus, but also in the same token they would do things that they taught me I should not do.
Mm,
Like they wouldn't tell the truth, or they would talk about people behind their back. They do the things that they tell you not to do in the Bible. And then I'm
mm,
also part of the queer community. Essentially, I grew up as a cis female, but I also started to like women as well.
mm.
And so
Was it
knowing that for
what age were
myself,
you around when that started
so
happening?
like 14,
Okay.
14,
Okay. So you're a
15.
teenager. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I didn't date anybody. I didn't tell
Mm-hmm.
anybody about this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell anybody about this until like maybe I was 20 or 21
Mm.
in college, away
Oh.
from the thing that I thought was going to hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I can't be myself with them. People they don't make sense. Like some of the things in the Bible don't make sense to me either. And I
Mm-hmm.
was told not to ask questions about those things. Just do what you're told to do.
Right.
Essentially, like just, believe in God and stuff. And I just thought, I believe in the blood of Christ and all those things
Mm-hmm.
that are supposed to be comforting. It's
Right.
supposed to be salvation,
Right.
but it doesn't feel like it to me. It didn't feel like it to me. And so I equated the behaviors with the adults that I saw around me with this religion. I'm like, all right, there's something wrong, because people here, they're backbitey, they're not cool with each other, they're kind of mean, they're not embracing. I don't understand what religion is supposed to do. This is not what they're embodying. This is not
Mm-hmm.
it. And also, if they really know who I am and how I feel about things, they're not going to like me. They were so
Mm.
ready to toss me in a lake of fire. It's not even funny.
So
That's what I believed.
was this when you were 14 and you had
Yeah,
these thoughts? Wow.
these were all these things. And I just figured, well, I just need to learn more about the Bible. And so I remember reading the Bible, going through it and looking and reading it. And it was hard because a lot of things didn't make sense to me. And so I was reading about, the Old Testament, and a lot of things were just like burn, destroy, crush.
Right.
People disobeyed. I'm like, yikes, that's more of the stuff I'm experiencing with the adults. There's something wrong with something's wrong with this thing here.
Mm.
And so I continue on. And I'll remember when I was 19, I read um, about the most religious or most righteous man, the most righteous man, and how in the city, and how God sent an angel to come save him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading it, and the townspeople, they saw the guy the angel come into the city, and they were like, "Hey, we want to mess with that angel." And the dude, the righteous guy, was like, "No, no, 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 you can't do that. Take my daughter instead." And I was like, what? This is the most righteous guy in the city. This doesn't make sense to me. All right,
Right.
this thing really has to go. So
Right.
this is where I started to deconstruct and pull away from religion, like fully. Like
Mm.
I wasn't trying to do anything within the church. In fact, I was trying to push against it. It was still a part of my consciousness as the enemy, as the
Mm.
enemy. It
Wow.
wasn't until sometime later I started to make peace with it. But
Yeah.
like in the last couple of years, I actually started to make peace with it and understand it more.
Yeah. Well, I consider myself a trained theologian and biblicist. So,
Yeah.
um, one of the things that I try to explain to people all the time when you're looking at the Bible and I'll just do my little Bible thing real quick. But
Okay.
the Hebrew Bible, or also known as the Old Testament, is really giving the reader a perspective about a particular people's struggle with their God and their disobedience, and their that consequently led to like slavery or there you go, slavery that led to, it's okay to sneeze. That was cool. Now um
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Me, I would probably did it without muting. That's just me. But but no, explaining to people that the Old Testament, the better way to contextualize the Old Testament is realizing its angle. Its angle is historic. Its angle is, here's a people who struggle with their God many, many times through disobedience, slavery, deliverance, and then this cycle just repeats over and over and over again. So now a lot of things in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible, it's not really meant for our example as much as it is meant for educating us about this is what happened and this is how God interacted with those people. And so I think that's important for people listening to understand. And that even though, make that information is generally just not understood by the average person. And that's fine, right? Because they don't, people go to school to study and learn this trade and skill just like they do anything else. What's interesting to me about what you said is that, you saw some inconsistencies, right? You saw people who were saying one thing and doing something different. I'm interested to know, what were any of those individuals, instrumental, and like, was there anyone in that group that you found that you could actually talk to and say, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on. Can you help me understand what's happening? I'm reading this in the Bible. I don't understand this. Did you have anyone around you to kind of help you maneuver through that experience in your life?
Well, I talked to many people. I've talked to different religions and different churches, because there's Christianity, there's the Lutheran church, there's the Pentecostals, the Baptists.
For
I
sure.
went to talk to leaders in those churches before I decided I was going to dump it all, and they gave me the
And
same answers. They
so
gave
was
me the
this?
same kind of answers. Was essentially, you don't understand, and they couldn't give me any clarity. So it was basically, what I feel about the Bible is something I don't understand. I feel like what I read, like with the inconsistencies,
Right.
I read that because it was like, go read, go figure it out. Somebody had sent something like that. And so I started to dive in, trying to figure it out for myself. And then I asked questions, and nobody has the answer to the questions. And so what I feel about it is invalid. Essentially, the conclusion that I came to was that, all right, the Bible isn't for me. The Bible wants me to die and to go into a lake of fire because I'm disgusting and I wasn't created. I was created to just be, tossed into lake of fire. Essentially, that was my whole existence. And that's what I believed about it. And nobody could give me any clarity about that, because on the very next breath, they want to say something like, God loves you, but only if you do X, Y, Z. XYZ, only do XYZ. And if you don't do XYZ, you're destined for a lake of fire. But also, you are perfect. God made you perfect the way you are. So which is it? Oh, it's too much for me. You know what? I'm not even going to try to figure it out because nobody has clarity. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw it all away. That's what I did. Like, just like,
So
it's
yeah.
too much
So
to try and figure out.
right. So I get it. So what was your experience like? Was that in college, or was that as a teenager you decided that I'm done with this, or that change happened when you decided to disregard? Would you say Christianity or the Bible or all of that?
All of that.
Okay.
I would say around 1920. So 19 year I'm not
1920,
that
yeah.
old.
Mhm.
19 years old, 19 years and 20 years old. This was like the in between. So 18, I went to college. 19, I still had some connection to my hometown. And
Mhm.
20, I was like, all right, I'm going to make a push to get it out of my life, but not just let it go, make an effort to push against the fact that anybody who is interested in it, they need to be out of my space or
Oh,
tackle it.
wow.
It's like that. Yeah. So going through this process of being frustrated with it so much, like attaching this idea that if you're a Christian, you're going to judge me and you're going to tell me I'm a bad person
Mhm.
because you believe in this thing that I don't. I'm destined for the lake of fire, and you're all pure and you're special because you go to church and you're holy, and you also do things that are backbiting and upsetting and hurtful. But
Mhm.
I am the one
Mhm.
who is going to suffer.
Right.
That's what I believed when anybody said something like, I'm Christian.
So y- there was no possible conversation that you would have or even entertain at that point because of those kinds of experiences. Is that right?
Absolutely. If the leaders of the leaders, the leaders of the leaders of the leaders, but if the leaders of the
Yeah.
churches, and I mean, I'm telling you, the place I come from, there are plenty of churches. There are
Mhm.
so many churches
Mm.
that, and people I could talk to, black leaders, white leaders, Mormon, Catholic.
Right.
It they didn't have the answers for me. Didn't have
Mm.
anything that made sense to me, and so I dumped it all. And then I was thought, well, you were all together and you're all against me, and I have to prove that I'm worth existing to you. And as I say this now at 39, I'm like, wow, that was 20 years ago, and I could smile and laugh at that person just because how I remember how I felt so angry about that. And now I've gone through this process where I'm like, oh yeah, I see where you're coming from now. It
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense. It makes sense to me. It doesn't apply to me,
Right.
but it makes sense. Yeah.
So how did you what was the internal journey like? Like so 13, 14, 15, or whatever, you started to identify differently, right? So you had some internal changes happening, right? And then
Yeah.
you have this Christian thing, right? You begin to sort of deconstruct or pull away from this,
Hmm.
maybe it was a part of your lifestyle, Christianity before, but there were some inconsistencies, which
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of people have that experience. And I think is valuable for us to think through that, because people listening, or maybe someone that they know, is having some very similar experiences. So what I'm interested in is, right, what was the internal battle like? Like internally, what was the emotional turmoil that, because I know you have to have some emotional turmoil. The reason why I bring it up, because as a chaplain, I deal with a lot of people who are having turmoil, emotional, right? Counseling needs, therapy, right? So there are
Hmm.
lots of issues, right, going on there. And some of
Yeah.
these individuals are, they are same gender loving, right? But they're in an environment where they really can't bring it up because they'll be made fun of, and so forth and so on. For multiple of reasons that I don't want to get into now, but I'm sure, but you can imagine what that's like.
Yeah.
And so,
Exactly.
yeah, I'm wondering, my experience, at least from what I've talked to people, said, people go into wanting to hurt themselves, become suicidal, have extreme amounts of depression, right? Because you're not only, maybe going against a community, maybe your own household, people are responding to you in non-supportive ways, but then you have to
Hmm.
live with that. Like, these are people that maybe you grew up with, people that are your friends, people in your neighborhood, family alike. So how would you, what is that experience like? I really want people to
Yeah.
hear and understand what that experience is like. Yeah.
Well, I want to share though that on that point
Mhm.
is that that experience is just not unique to trans people. This idea or same gender loving people, the idea that you can't reveal your authentic self to somebody because you're going to get hurt.
Mm.
That happens to everybody. Everybody has that experience in which they have something the truth, I like to say the truth of who you are, but the truth of who you are, you can't share that with another person. What I describe as the truth is how you feel about any experience or event. It's your feelings about that experience, and the expression of that is the truth of who you are. And
Right.
so if you don't like something, or if you do like something, depending on the people around you, they're going to respond to that. So let's say you have a hobby that you really, really enjoy. You want to share that with people, but you get laughed at. You get laughed at for being smart. You get laughed at for being tall. You get laughed at for being black. You get laughed at for anything that you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you express that to somebody, it's going to happen, right? So people understand that feeling of wanting to hide. But what really gets people who are really in high focus right now, which when they're told that what they're doing is wrong, and most people want to point at them because they can't see the similarity, like same gender loving or trans people, we want to look at them because they are absolutely different from us, and they're easy to mark. I don't understand their experience, so I
Easy to
don't want them
identify.
to
Yeah. Easy
express
to
it.
poke fun at. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
understand them, so I don't want them to express whatever it is that they're expressing. I
Mhm.
don't want them to do that. So then when we feel that way, or other people feel that way, they're going to make fun, and they're going to try and hurt, and they're going to try and stop them from expressing the truth of who they are, how they feel about themselves,
Mm.
expressing that. They're going to stop that. And when it happens to anybody, when anybody feels like they can't express the truth, they hurt.
Mm.
They
Right.
feel
Right.
uncomfortable. They do things that make them feel like, well, what is the point? What is the point of life if no one wants to see me in all my authenticity? That's why I'm so depressed. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I feel so unheard, so unseen. I may as well just not be here. Those are some of the things that I've felt, I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely thought about. But I was fortunate enough to always be in a space in which I would create that for myself. So
What do you mean?
I say fortunate, yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
interesting, right? Yeah.
yeah, it was, I was conditioned to believe that I was never enough, and that if I showed my truth of anything, I'd be made fun of. So
Mm-hmm.
anything that was important to me, I'd be made fun of. So, or I'd be ostracized. So for example,
Mm.
I didn't come out until I was out of the house. I
Mm.
didn't talk about my dislike of Christianity until I was out of the house. So
Mm.
there was no threat to me about my physical harm or safety in that way.
Mm.
There was none. I was in a different space.
Okay.
But I had just perceived that it would be that way.
Mm.
And so I was always just afraid to
Mm.
share. So I
Wow.
didn't have the same kind of restrictions that somebody who's 15, 16, 17 living in the house.
Right.
I didn't have that.
Right.
I just kind of kept to myself and didn't talk about many things, not important things like that.
That had to
And
be
it was like,
lonely. Was that a
yeah,
very lonely place for you?
yeah, definitely. Very
Yeah.
lonely place.
How did you
And
deal with that? That is, man, I'm sitting here listening and I'm thinking to myself, how, how does a person deal with the fact that they can't really come out uh and then, I mean, literally, you figured out a way to like how to do. To me, it sounds like
yeah,
you figured out a way
see, I
how to
figured out how to
manage
do
it.
it, but
Yeah.
it didn't come out. It didn't come out for years later. I didn't understand what I was doing. It was already programmed into me. It was already programmed into me. So anything that I would do and I would believe it was important and special to me, I would not share it with another person. So that was just because I was afraid that they would make fun of me for it. And sure enough, it happened. It always happened. I would go to different places and I would feel like, oh, I need to keep this to myself. So I went to college and I was like kind of afraid to come out because, it was like, 2003, something along those lines.
Mm.
And it wasn't really widely accepted. So then I got a girlfriend and I decided the entire state of Ohio was kind of messed up. And I moved. I went to California and then I was out. I was out in California.
Mhm.
I was like, people met my girlfriend and all that stuff. And I thought I was going to make some close connections and real friendships with people because I'm finally sharing my authentic self. But that wasn't true. I found another way to keep myself trapped by thinking that I wanted to transition from female to male, but I didn't share that with anybody in California. I
Why
thought for
didn't you
sure they
share
would
that?
reject me. I thought for sure that they would reject me. They would reject me because they didn't understand the process. I didn't really have the language for it either. I didn't understand all the things, and there was nobody to talk to about it.
Well, and well, that's interesting that you said, because in California, I'm on the West Coast. So
Hmm.
California, man, it's a little bit more open about stuff like that. It's like, so why are you saying that there's a difference between a same gender loving person versus the trans community? Is
Yeah,
that why you
yeah,
kind of like, yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
yeah. There is a huge difference because there's still same gender loving or still cisgendered people, and for
Mm.
the what I believe
Oh.
is that um
Hmm.
having meeting or knowing trans people is a complete shock to those who have never thought about that. It has never been in their consciousness before. And now you've got somebody saying that after millions of years of evolution, that's probably what they'll say, something like that. Like,
Yeah.
they've only known two genders, and all of a sudden you're coming here telling me that you are not female, you are a man. That doesn't make any sense to me,
Mm.
and I'm going to punch your face because you said that to me. I don't
So you
like it.
thought violence was usually the way that people responded, maybe?
Well, I think violence is the way people respond, like humans in
Right.
general.
Yeah,
If they
humans do
don't
it.
understand it, they're afraid of it, and you want to destroy these things that you're afraid of because it makes you feel powerless.
Mm.
Those things. And so it happens kind of instantly with people. They're like, I don't understand you. You got to get away from me. You're disgusting. But anyway, there was nobody to talk to about what I was thinking and feeling
Mm.
because nobody else could fathom it.
Mm. Wow.
No one couldn't fathom that.
So,
And I'm like, it's
when
interesting.
you moved to California, about what age was that for you? When you
Oh,
moved
I
to
was
California?
26. I was
Okay.
26 when I moved
Twen-
to
Your
California.
mid-20s. Okay, so how
Mhm.
was that experience when you decided to go through, okay, now I want to become a man? What was that experience like for you? Like,
So I spent all of California not telling anybody about that.
mm,
So
very
I
lonely
left
place
in,
still.
yeah, it was all lonely. It was all lonely because, and I,
Jeez.
I figured that the patterns of possibility, that's what the company is called because of
Right,
that. I
right.
realized that I was stuck in a pattern of just creating this loneliness for myself by not sharing
Mm,
the truth of how I feel about things. And
mm,
so I was afraid of being rejected.
mhm,
And so I ended up moving again. I had the opportunity to move from California to Chicago. And by the way, in California, I wasn't in one of the big lustrous areas. I was in
mm,
the Central Valley. I was in the
mm.
Modesto area.
Okay.
So it's like rural like farm land, and it's
Okay.
it's different from being in the Bay Area or LA.
Mm. Copy.
So yeah. So there wasn't much people to talk to about that, and it was still like in 2008 they were they were the first state to get uh, gay marriage, but
Mm.
still they kind of pushed back against that, hemmed and hawed. It just, you
Right,
know,
right, right.
people weren't really aligned on this
Mhm.
idea of being trans.
Mm.
And then Caitlyn Jenner came out, and that's about the time I moved to Chicago. I moved to Chicago right as she came out,
Mhm.
and so I found the right people and the language to put it together, what I was thinking and feeling. And through that process, I learned more about myself and how important it is to be open and honest with people. And
Right.
that was the only way that I started to make friendships. Like, I started to connect with people because I had to share more about what I was thinking and feeling with others.
Mhm.
And the problem that I've discovered in coaching people and then learning more about myself is that we are on autopilot so much that we are
Mhm.
told what to think, and we don't really know how we feel about things. We're just going and going and going,
Right.
but we're not feeling anything.
Right.
And so if you can't express how you feel about something, which is
Mhm.
the truth of who you are,
Right.
you're not going to make a connection. That's what I discovered.
Mm. Making a connection with other people. So,
Yeah.
had you, through all of that experience, which is a lot,
Yeah.
had you considered, like, was there any other spiritual resource? So let's say Christianity. So think about people who are listening to you,
Hmm.
right? They hear that, you had this experience, you kind of grew up in church, or you did, around the Christian environment, and then
Mm-hmm.
there were some inconsistencies, but you really didn't have anyone to engage you about the deep questions you had, the things that were seeming contradictory to you, and you were going through some changes in your own life, and coming to an awareness of who you were and what you were feeling and what you were thinking. I think everybody gets that. Everybody understands that.
Mm-hmm.
You had questions about faith, particularly about Christianity, but the responses you got were not making much sense to you, and then you began to sort of just do away with that, right? Was that what
Mm-hmm.
did you replace that lack of spirituality or that spiritual community with another community or
Yeah.
spirituality, that any kind of spirituality become did you become aware of any other spiritual resources during that time?
No, no, like yeah, I was like, yeah, just spending time in the bars would be the the other thing that I did.
Mm-hmm.
I That happened for a long, long time until I would say fairly recently, maybe the last 5 or 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
where I decided that I don't want to do so much of this. I looked into Buddhism and other spiritual practice, but I didn't dive into them because it still didn't feel right to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
like anything that couldn't answer these questions about who I was and why I deserved to be hurt. Like
Mm.
I couldn't get rid of that. I had to get rid of that first, that idea that I
Oh.
deserved to be hurt, because that's
You
what
said, oh,
I
hold on. You
learned.
said why I deserve to be. I've never heard anyone describe it that way.
Oh yeah. This oh
Wow.
yeah, that's what I felt. I was like, well, I deserve to be hurt. I'm put here to just be harmed. I'm put here as a cosmic joke. Like everything, I mean, all this feels natural and good to me, but everybody else says it's wrong and I need to not exist.
Mm.
And I had to get through that, and I didn't think there was no other religion that could replace that or any spirituality that could replace that. It was just me looking at my own patterns in life. I say that it's not where I just automatically figured it out. Somebody had told me that in therapy, I went to therapy, I went to counseling,
Mm-hmm.
and cognitive behavioral therapy was something that was really helpful for me.
Mm.
So they had told me to pay attention to how you feel about the things you're doing in life
Mm.
and just go with that. And I took off with it, and I started to really like analyze how I felt about things and really look at some behaviors and actions with other people. And then things started to make sense to me as far as my reconciliation with Christianity and
How
letting,
did you reconcile with Christianity?
well, I decided that there are a lot of people who do things because of how they feel about, well, everybody does something because of how they feel about it.
Yeah.
And so whatever the person's beliefs are, they are theirs, and whatever are mine.
Right.
And so I get to decide whether or not I want to accept this idea from another person that I'm okay or that I'm not okay. I'm a
Mm.
good person or I'm not a good person. I
Okay.
get to make that decision for myself. And
Mm.
so if I want to suffer, then I'll continue listening to the people that tell me I should. But I get to
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful. Powerful. So yeah, man, I think there are a lot of Christians out there, right? I think there are a lot of people out there who would definitely listen to you. Christians. I mean,
Hmm.
you may already have a large community like that. I'm not sure, but I think there are a lot of Christians out there who would listen to you, and who would welcome. Not that you need that, but I think it is important for everyone to understand that there are different ways and different streams of Christianity and Christian thought, and this is historically true. So I'm not saying anything that is that's not that hasn't been true for hundreds of years. That you have different streams of Christianity. You have an Eastern Christian experience in history, and you have a Western Christian experience. We live in a Western Christian experience, but there's an Eastern Christian experience that most people in the West who consider themselves Christians or fundamentalists or evangelical or what have you, they have no clue about, nor are they interested in that conversation. But if the truth be
Hmm.
known, I think that if people would open themselves up to, your story, for instance, or stories, many stories like yours, right? And have conversation. And I think that's critically important, having the ability to listen to someone else's story.
Yeah.
You may not agree with them. That's fine. You don't have to agree with them. You may not like it. That's fine. You don't have to, but you still can be cordial. You still can listen. You still can seek to understand
Hmm.
instead of knock and go in this other route. Because I can tell you, from my experience working with people of different faith groups. So as a chaplain, I work with people from many different faiths, from Buddhists to Hindus to Islamic. These are my colleagues that I work with. It's kind of ecumenical, to say the least. And so I spend most of my time talking to people who are not in the church or may not even associate with anything like that. So it's critically important that we understand that when you're in a bubble and you're talking to people who are also in that bubble with you,
Yeah.
you can't see anything different. And that's
Right.
problematic, right? Particularly in this day and time. And
Hmm.
so I believe that there are many people who can benefit from what you are offering. And if they can just listen to the story, right? I mean, pick up these critical nuggets that you're like in your story, like listen to what he said, listen to how coach said it, and try to understand where he's coming from. Now, coach, the truth of the matter is on your end, it doesn't matter what people believe, think, or not. But I want people to who may be listening and having that old like gnawing feeling coming up in their heart listening to you. I want them to take a breath, breathe, pause, and listen to this story. Listen to the story. Now,
Well, if I could say something
yeah, yeah,
to that,
absolutely. You sure can.
though, I would hope that um that I uh, I would hope that people would be able to hear me and feel my experience and become a part of my experience, in the sense that you don't have to worry so much about what other people think of you, as long as you know how you feel about yourself and
Right,
how you are. So you don't
right,
have to be mad at Lee for not believing what you believe,
right,
because it doesn't matter. You know what your relationship is like with your Christ and your God,
right,
you know.
right,
And
right,
I would hope that you could see that for yourself, and you could look at Lee and say, well, Lee's just doing the same thing I'm doing.
mm-hmm.
Lee's doing what feels great for him, and Lee's not harming me in any way.
Right, right,
And
absolutely.
I just hope that that would be something that I'd come across with that. And say also, last thing is that I know that it's not all Christians, or not all this, or not all that.
Right,
You don't need to group people into categories about
right,
things. It's
absolutely.
about the truth of who you are, is about how you behave or how you feel in a specific instance. So if you're coming to me and you're talking to me, even though your whole religion or your whole life is Christianity, but you're coming and talking to me, and you're listening to me and listening to how I've had this experience, and are interested in experience, we're not going to be fighting. I'm not going to try and attack you. I'm
Right.
here, and you're here to see me, and I'm here to see you as your authentic self. And so I made peace with Christianity, because I believe that's the core of it. That's the core.
Mm,
That's the peace to
right.
connect with each other. I
Wow.
don't have
Wow.
to
Very,
fight you
very
for
good.
that. You don't have to fight
Absolutely.
me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great point. So how do you help your clients that you coach? What is the like number one um what is the number one need that you help your people that you coach deal with, and how do you help how does your niche
Mm,
help them become more authentically themselves and
yeah,
develop these kind of communities where they're not stuck off and lonely? Because I think that's a big one, right? Like
that
you
is
would
it.
think that in the world that we live in today, that you couldn't connect to a community, right? Because there's so many different ways you can do that. But apparently there are people who still have that struggle, and you help these people. So tell us about how you do that.
Yeah, the most common problem is that people feel like others don't like them. But
Mm,
the truth about it is that they don't like you. It's not that they don't like you, it's that they don't know you. You
mm,
don't give them anything exciting or interesting to know about who you are. because you were doing what I did, you're hiding. You're hiding how you feel about stuff. Like if you're hiding your joy, you're hiding what frustrates you, you don't want to share with people. Because when you do that, you've probably had experiences in which you have this joyful thing that you want to talk to people about. But when you start talking about it, people are like, rah, 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 shut up, don't talk.
Yeah.
So you've learned to every time that you try to open up that you won't do that. But you have to face that. This is what I help. This is where I do my work, is because I help people face that. The rah, 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 it's coming. It's going to come. People aren't going to like what I say right now. People aren't going to like some of the things that you say. People aren't going to like how you act and behave. It has to be, you have to live your truth. We can't hide that stuff. At least for one person, we can't hide that stuff because it's how we feel about ourselves. It's our authenticity. We always want it to come out. It's going to. So what I say is work through, build the skills for, build resilience against the rejection, against the haters that are going to come out. And when you do that, you are going to find your tribe, because when you put your light out there, when people see it, there are going to be people out there who were just where you were, essentially, who are afraid to shine. But you are going to shine, and they're going to see that, and they're like, oh, that's just like me. Wow, that's amazing. I want to be like that. I want to be connected like that. And the way you benefit from this is that you want to talk about that thing that's shining, that you're holding above your head, the light that you have. You want to talk about it just as much as this person who is hiding wants to talk about it. You don't have to do anything but be yourself, and people who are like you will be attracted to you. You don't have to go looking anywhere, because everywhere you go, there you are, and there will be the people who will see you. So I help people get through that, understand more about themselves. I help people with journaling. So I have a free journal prompt, 50 journal prompts to help people understand more about themselves, because you might not know what to say, but also I'm going to help you figure out how to say it too. So there's a whole coaching thing that goes into it, but in the gist of it is helping people understand more about what's important to them and sharing that with another person. And if I could just share 3 things that
absolutely.
you consider talking about, or consider learning about yourself, so that you can find the right people. So I tell people to search for or know more about their history, their hobbies, and their habits. Your history is your identity, those things that have shaped who you are. Maybe your gender, your race, how you grew up. You grew up in the same parent household, then like 2-parent household with same gender loving people. You're going to have a different experience. You probably want to talk about that because that has shaped your life.
For sure.
So yeah. And so that's your history. And then your hobbies, those things that bring you joy. Now you go out there and you talk about the things that bring you joy unashamed, because you're going to run into people that don't like it, but that's your joy. You love it. You can't be connected to somebody who's not interested in the thing that you want. So I'm talking about making close friendships, right? You want to spread your joy. You want to talk about things that make you happy. You don't want to fight to get somebody interested in the thing that makes you happy. And then finally, your habits. If you're a go-getter, you're up working 13 hours a day, it's going to be hard for you to connect with somebody who works 4 hours a day, like who has a part-time job, because you have a different mindset. You're going to be doing things differently. So you want to look at those things that you do on a day-to-day basis and know that that's a part of your lifestyle, whether it's the food, the kind of food that you eat, if you're a vegetarian. And it's going to be difficult for you to might connect with meat eaters because of whatever culture that might be there, their habits that might be there. But you want to focus on knowing those things about yourself, and then connecting with other people who do those things that are important to you about them. So that's your history, your hobbies, and your habits.
Very good. Very good. All right. So for those of you listening on the Next Evolution podcast, thank you so much for listening. Coach Lee has given us some wonderful nuggets there. He shared at the very, very end. Please make sure you follow him. You can check him out on social media platforms like Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at patternsofpossibilities.com, patternsofpossibilities.com. The link will also be in the show notes for you as well. And so to all of you listening, we're going to continue this conversation, but all of you listening out there on the podcast, Thank you so much for listening. And please subscribe, continue to support as we continue to put out information that's beneficial to your spiritual life and your journey. We're here for you. Life is changing, the world is changing, and so are you. And we're here to help you through that process. So look forward to talking to you next time. See you later. Peace.
All right.
All right, Coach. So hey, that's great. What's
I'm sorry about
no, you're
sorry
good.
about that. I felt like we didn't get too much in this to the spiritual thing.
Oh no, it's cool. So we're still recording, which is fine because
Okay.
I can stop. I can be. So, Coach, we've talked.